Hello and welcome to Business Standard Views of the Week. Is the optimism surrounding the Indian economy warranted? How did we end up missing out on crucial data when it comes to India's fiscal challenges? And does India have any military options against China? Subscribe to Business Standard and read this week's top opinion pieces to find out. We start off with an incisive piece on India's economic prospects. This is festival time and good news has seeped from the buoyant stock market into the rest of the economy, or the other way around. In fact, the finance minister has forecast near double-digit growth this year and the next, and rapid growth further into the future. But is this optimism warranted? Answering this question in his latest column, TNNN brings together diverse data points from the government's recent spate of programs such as Gati Shakti and asset monetization to the macroeconomic numbers to paint an accurate picture of what the future will look like for the Indian economy and the challenges the country will face. Most importantly, amid all the optimism, the column provides a clear-eyed appraisal of the news around us, both the good and the bad. No doubt, following Nenan's sober approach to economic analysis will benefit Indian policymakers. On that note, however, all the analysis will be for naught if crucial data is found to be missing. Consider the following. The union government's finances are routinely analyzed and critically appraised, but little analysis of the state government's finances takes place during the year. In his latest column, A.K. Bhattacharya explains how this can lead to a dangerous gap in our understanding of the true extent of India's fiscal challenges. Consider that only about 20 states have so far released their unaudited and provisional budget data for April-August 2021. The column analyzes how the states spent and collected the revenue and highlights the warning signs that emerge. After providing the diagnosis, the column also points out what the first task at hand should be if we want to rectify the situation. Hopefully, as suggested by Bhattacharya, this gap in our economic data will be plugged in haste. Speaking of dealing with crisis, our next piece has some crucial advice. The IMF's latest fiscal monitor and World Economic Outlook make an interesting reading. The conclusion is that for rich economies, the COVID-19 pandemic is an aberration. China and the US have in fact emerged stronger from the pandemic. But what about India? Rathan Roy's latest column delves into the IMF's findings to figure out whether India has suffered permanent scarring or not, highlighting that India has historically shown the ability to face up to economic challenges. Roy explains why he thinks that the situation might not be the same this time around. He also points out what the present dispensation can learn from the Vajpayee and Manmohan Singh eras when it comes to handling a crisis. Clearly, overcoming the long-term economic impact of COVID will be a Herculean challenge. Speaking of Herculean challenges, the government's ambitious infrastructure push will surely face its fair share. Let's dive into the matter. Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently launched a national master plan for infrastructure and connectivity, which he named Gati Shakti. While highlighting the merits of the plan, Business Standard points out the one other area apart from just implementation, where coordination is a must if we have to succeed. The editorial touches upon why previous infrastructure pushes by the union government failed and prescribes what planners need to do to ensure that Gati Shakti does not meet a similar fate. It also highlights the specific sectors that will need particular attention. Developing world-class infrastructure is an economic imperative, but so is the security of the realm. With that in mind, let's address the biggest security challenge our country faces. The failure of the recent round of talks on troop pullbacks in eastern Ladakh suggests that India urgently needs a fresh strategy for handling the broader dispute along the Sino-Indian border. On that note, while negotiations will continue, does India have any military options in the region? What can New Delhi do to force the issue? And what are the constraints it faces? Answering these questions, Business Standard reveals in detail how Beijing has been upping the ante of late and how India has deployed its forces to counter the dragon. Hopefully, dialogue will prove sufficient in solving the conflict between India and China. Now, moving away from geostrategy, we analyze the dragon's economic health. Predicting doom for the Chinese economy isn't new. Commentators have been telling us for a decade now that China's debt bubble is about to collapse. Most recently, many pundits said that Evergrande's problems were bound to transform into a serious crisis for the Chinese economy. In fact, Western commentary described it as China's Lehman moment. In his latest column, T.T. Ram Mohan dissects the available information to answer whether the troubles at Evergrande could lead to financial contagion. The column delves into the health of China's banking system and its ability to handle the present crisis. It also highlights how the Chinese authorities are likely to respond, and it concludes by succinctly demystifying the convulsions we are seeing in the Chinese economy. It would be in everybody's interest if financial contagion and a shock to the global economy are avoided. With that unexceptionable statement, we move on from the macro to the world of corporate governance. We start with some questions. What is the key to successfully navigating the governance disputes that will continue so long as there are self-interested promoters, money-motivated institutional investors, small shareholders, and regulators? And can a company's directors fulfill their duty armed just with the knowledge of the applicable laws? Answering these questions, R. Gopal Krishnan reveals the one principle that every director should follow, and which could provide a fresh perspective into the Z Entertainment and Invesco tangle or the Dish and Axis case.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.